Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video.
I always thought I had a perfect life. I was a stay-at-home mom with two beautiful children, a loving husband, and a best friend who was practically a sister to me. My days were filled with school runs, grocery shopping, and play dates with other moms in the neighborhood. I had a routine that I followed every day, and I was content with my life. My husband, John, was a successful businessman. He worked long hours and traveled frequently for work, but he always made sure to call and check in on us when he was away. We had been married for 10 years and our relationship was rock solid. Or so I thought. My best friend, Lisa, was my partner in crime. We had known each other since we were in diapers and we did everything together. We took our kids to the park, went shopping, and even went on vacation together. She was married to a man named Mike, who was also a good friend of John's. The four of us would often get together for dinner parties and game nights. I never suspected anything was wrong. John was always affectionate with me, and Lisa was always there for me when I needed her. I trusted them completely. That was until I found out the truth. I came home early from a trip to the grocery store one day and walked in on John and Lisa in the middle of their act. They were so shocked to see me that they didn't even have a chance to deny it. At first, I was in denial. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what was happening. But as the reality of the situation set in, I felt a deep sense of betrayal. How could they do this to me? I had given them my trust, and they had violated it in the worst possible way. That's when the anger started to creep in. I wasn't going to let them get away with this. I was going to make them pay for what they had done to me. As I tried to process the news of the affair, I began to think back on all the times John and Lisa had spent together. Had there been signs that I missed? Had they been sneaking around behind my back for months or even years? I couldn't believe how blind I had been. I had always prided myself on being a good wife and mother. I cooked dinner every night, kept the house clean, made sure the kids were taken care of. But all that hard work seemed meaningless now that I knew the truth. I tried to confront John and Lisa, but they were both in shock and didn't have much to say. John kept apologizing and saying he didn't know what had come over him. Lisa just stared at the ground and refused to meet my eyes. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. Should I forgive them and try to move on? Or should I leave John and start a new life without him? I was in shock. I walked back down and unpacked the groceries. As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about the affair. The images of John and Lisa together burned into my mind, and I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. I knew I couldn't forgive them. Not yet. I needed time to figure out what I wanted to do. The next few days were a blur. I went through the motions of my daily routine, but my mind was elsewhere. I spent hours scrolling through social media trying to distract myself from the pain. But the more I thought about the affair, the angrier I became. John and Lisa had both betrayed me in the worst way possible. They had taken advantage of my trust and thrown our whole lives into chaos. I knew I couldn't just let it go. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and couldn't think straight. Every time I looked at John, all I could see was them together laughing behind my back and lying to my face. I felt like I had been living in a bubble, completely unaware of the reality of my own life. I started to piece together the clues that had been right in front of me all along. The long hours at work, the frequent business trips, the sudden increase in phone calls and text messages. I had been so naive, so trusting. I felt like a fool. I began to plan my revenge meticulously, piece by piece. It was like putting together a puzzle, and I had to be careful not to miss anything. I knew that I needed to be smart about it, to play the long game, and to make sure that I had enough evidence to take them down once and for all. The first thing I did was to start gathering evidence. I started with their text messages, which I had access to because my husband and I shared a phone plan. I installed a spyware program that allowed me to monitor their conversations without them knowing. I also set up hidden cameras in our house and I recorded their phone conversations when they were in the same room as me. One message that my so-called BFF sent was that she is a stay-at-home mom, and even if we continue, she won't know. You know you like it. I couldn't react, even if I wanted to. I knew that I needed to be patient, to wait for the right moment to strike, but it was hard. Every day I was consumed by anger and hurt, and I wanted nothing more than to confront them and make them pay. But I knew that I couldn't do that. I had to be smart and I had to play the long game. As the days turned into weeks and then months, I continued to gather evidence. I took pictures of them together, recorded their conversations, and made sure to document every move they made. I knew that I needed to be careful not to raise any suspicions, so I kept everything hidden and secretive. Finally, I had enough evidence to take them down. I even had a recording of them confessing to their affair. I knew that it was time to make my move. I contacted a lawyer and filed for divorce. I also made sure to have all of the evidence I had gathered ready to present to the court. I wanted to make sure that my husband would pay for what he had done and that Lisa would be held accountable for her role in the affair. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted everyone to know what they had done to me. So I contacted a media person and gave them all of the evidence I had gathered. I wanted my story to be told, and I wanted my husband and Lisa to be publicly shamed for what they had done. It wasn't long before my story was all over the news. My husband and Lisa were exposed, and their reputations were ruined. They lost everything they had worked so hard for, and they were both forced to start over from scratch. Update 1 month later. When news of my husband's affair with my best friend broke, it wasn't just John, Lisa, and Mike who were affected. My in-laws, my parents, and our family friends all reached out to me, offering their support and sympathy. At first, I was hesitant to talk to anyone. I felt embarrassed and ashamed, like I had somehow failed as a wife and mother. But as the days went on, I realized that I couldn't keep everything bottled up inside. My in-laws were the first to contact me. They were devastated by what had happened and they wanted to make sure that I was okay. My mother-in-law cried on the phone as she told me how much she loved me and how she couldn't believe that her son would do something like this. My parents were equally shocked and upset. They came over to my house with food and flowers, and they stayed with me for a few days to make sure that I was taking care of myself. They told me that they were proud of me for being strong and that they would always be there for me. Our family friends also reached out to me. They offered words of encouragement and support, and they shared their own stories of heartbreak and betrayal. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone and that there were people who understood what I was going through. But even with all of their support, I still felt lost and alone. It was hard to imagine a future without my husband, and it was even harder to imagine how I would ever be able to trust anyone again. Update 2. 8 months later. After my husband's affair with Lisa was exposed, it wasn't long before her husband, Mike, contacted me. He told me that he had no idea that his wife was cheating on him with my husband and that he was devastated by the news. We talked for a long time and I could hear the pain in his voice. He told me how he had loved Lisa so much and how he had trusted her completely. He said that he felt like his whole world had been turned upside down and that he didn't know how he was going to move on from this. I could relate to what he was going through and I tried my best to comfort him. I told him that I understood how he was feeling and that I was there for him if he needed anything. We kept in touch over the next few weeks. Eventually, we met up in person. It was awkward at first, but we soon fell into an easy conversation. We talked about our marriages and how we had both been betrayed by the people we loved. We also talked about our kids and how they were dealing with everything that had happened. As we talked, I realized that Mike was a good man. He was kind, thoughtful, and caring, and he didn't deserve to be hurt like this. I could tell that he was still in love with Lisa, but he knew that he could never go back to her after what she had done. Over time, Mike and I grew closer. We started going on walks together, and we would talk for hours about everything and anything. I found myself looking forward to seeing him, and I could tell that he felt the same way. Eventually, we both admitted to having feelings for each other. It was scary and confusing, but we knew that we couldn't deny what we were feeling. We've decided not to take it further yet. It could just be us bonding over the trauma, and I need to stand on my own 2 feet before I get into another relationship. NTA, this is why I'm so skeptical about having girl best friends. This has happened to me before, but I was in high school, not married in a relationship of 10 years with kids. I feel so damn bad for the OP. Imagine walking in on your husband and BFF doing it, and then walking down and unpacking groceries. OP felt dead. She was in shock and couldn't even process the pain. What type of assholes are they? This made my blood boil. Good on her for exposing them publicly. They deserved it. Girl, if I were you, I would get with Mike just to get more revenge. But you seem to have developed a connection with him, and the fact that you're still keeping your emotions at bay says a lot about you. Your ex-husband and an ex-best friend are the worst types of people. They can rot together now. Next story. So in my neighborhood, the houses are built sort of like a sandwich. So there is my house, my driveway, a shared hedge fence, my neighbor's driveway, and then his house. I hope that is clear. My neighbor has 2 kids, each of whom have their own car. So they have 4 cars, and my family has 2. There is no street parking. Our driveways lead to detached garages. His kid has the habit of parking in my driveway when I'm not home. He can park between our houses and just walk to his side entrance. I am sort of done asking him not to do this, but I'm not calling bylaw enforcement or towing him. I didn't want grief in the neighborhood. Yesterday he did it again, so I parked behind him and went for a bike ride. We're enjoying a beautiful Indian summer. When I got back, I noticed that the hedge was torn up. It was kind of hard to miss. I guess what happened is after he got home, everyone else left. I have no idea why he didn't call a cab or an Uber. What he did instead is drive over the hedge between our driveways. These aren't little raspberry brambles. These are 30-year-old hedges. Anyway, his dad is sitting there looking at the hedge. He asks me if I know what happened. I said, come over for a beer and we can check my surveillance. So now the kid is choked because he has to pay to replace the hedge and his car is all scratched up. I guess he had been warned he would be fired if he was late for work again. So the kid thinks I'm the asshole for blocking him in on purpose, which I guess I sort of did. But the consequences were completely unintended. I was planning on moving the car to let them out when I got home. He could have called an Uber. Hell, he could have called in sick. Dude, this is excellent. I'm going to have to learn to use techniques like this when dealing with similar situations. Neighbors' kids jumping over our shared front yard, destroying newly laid out landscaping. When this happens again, which I expect it will this coming spring, and neighbor asks what happened, my response, please come over for some tea and we'll check my exterior camera. Better than blaming her kids outright and creating tension. Thank you, and OPNTA at all. It sounds like you have asked them not to park in your driveway on more than one occasion, and they still do. NTA, the only way you could possibly be TA is if you had never asked them not to park there, their car was running, someone was inside the vehicle and said to you, we'll just be a moment, and you parked there anyway and left. And even then, it's your driveway, so you can do what you want. If you don't want to get blocked into a parking space that doesn't belong to you, don't park there. It's not hard. Next story. I'm a 45-year-old mom of 10 and 2-year-old girls. My best friend, 47, male, lives next door to us. I've been best friends with him for 20 years now, and my husband thinks of him as a brother. My girls love him like an uncle. Anyway, a few days ago, I took my girls to McDonald's for a happy meal. We decided to eat at home, so I sat them up at the dinner table with their food. My toddler loves throwing her food to the dogs, and she did this. I scolded her, told her not to do that, and it could make the puppies sick, and the food was for her tummy, not the dog's. Well, my toddler started crying. My best friend then started babying her, telling her it was okay. Just basically telling her the opposite of what I told her. I politely asked my friend to stop babying her after I scold her, and she needs to learn to stop throwing food or giving it to the dogs. He then tells me that what I've done can cause serious issues with her. He said that she will relate food with getting in trouble, and it could cause her to be anorexic when she gets older. I told him that she was my child. I know her better than anyone, and she was crying because she can't give her food to the dogs. He told me that I needed to pick up a freaking book and read up on how to raise kids. Well, I kind of snapped. I told him that he has zero right telling me how to raise my kids when he didn't raise his own. He left his kids in a different state with their mother, refused to provide any type of financial support, and even quit a job when child support started being garnished from his checks. My kids are my world. I do not abuse or mistreat them in any way, but I do expect my kids to be well-mannered, and they are. I'm not trying to raise spoiled little entitled assholes. I haven't talked to this friend in 3 to 4 days because of this. He thinks I went too far, calling him out about his own parenting, but I don't think I did. I could be wrong, though. I don't feel bad about what I told him. AITA? Update. I don't know how to do an official update or anything, so I just edited my original to include an update. Thank you, everyone. Sometimes you just need to hear the words of a stranger. I've read every single comment, and I thank each of you for taking the time to read and respond. Yes, I've been friends with this person for 20 years, but I've only been a parent for 10. I'll gladly trash the friendship when it comes to my kids. Gladly, especially if this friendship will affect my kids in any type of negative way. My girls have both parents and don't need someone from the outside coming in and reprimanding me for how I discipline my kids when that person has been no kind of parent himself. All of your comments and responses have made me really think about my friend and how he is. He is a freaking narcissistic asshole that acts like a freaking baby when he doesn't get what he wants. I guess I've just ignored it for the last 10 years because I've had my kids to worry about. I failed to notice how clingy he's gotten over the last 10 years, how much he acts like a child, worse than my kids, when he doesn't get his way, or how he wants or expects me to basically beg him to go places with us. For example, if we're going out to eat, we will invite him. When he declines, we go on about our business and go out to eat. While we are out, he will text me and say he's going to come with us, and after I tell him we have already left, he will tell me that I should have asked him again just to make sure he didn't want to go. Or shit like if we plan a family activity, he'll be like, "Tell me what time we're leaving." When I tell him that it's just us and the girls going, he will get pissy and go home, won't talk to me for a few days. It's really childish shit. When I sit and think about it, it actually feels like I've got 3 kids. Just one of them is a nearly 50-year-old man. Yes, time to reevaluate this friendship. I'm sitting on my bed typing this and I feel so freaking used and so blind, stupid, like a total freaking dumbass, like a freaking idiot. There's more to this and why I feel like this that I won't post right here. I'm not the right sub for it. Anyway, thank you, kind strangers of Reddit, for making me open my eyes and not judging me too harshly, even though I needed it. Thanks again, people, for making my blind ass open my eyes. He is no threat or danger to my kids whatsoever, but other things, Nothing harmful, dangerous, or threatening to my kids or anyone else. Just how he's been using us for a while now, and we were too blind to see it or just chose to ignore it. It's sad to say, I do believe this friendship has run its course. Thank you again. NTA for this situation, you are parenting your child. That being said, you're calling a man who abandoned his children physically and financially a great guy makes me wonder your ability to judge another's character and why you would want someone with next to none around your children, which does make you a bit of an AH. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. "Still here?" Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. "Probably Sam." Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.